So there's quite a bit of reading in our modules. One of the things that I want to point out though is for every page that I give you, for every topic that I give you, I'll also give you a list of things that you need to kind of watch out for or look for. So instead of having to sit and read every single word in the readings that I'm giving you, I'm asking you just to skim the document and look for these important points. So that way you're not necessarily spending as much time as you think you would. So make sure you have pen and paper handy, take notes as you're reading, because you will see these in our quizzes, and you are also going to be using this in your discussion too. As we're working through this module, if there are pieces of artwork or pieces of architecture that you find very fascinating, make note of what these are, the names, and then where you can go back and find them. Because for our discussion, you are going to be kind of comparing and contrasting two major pieces and talking a little bit about that. But you'll get to that when we do our discussion. Okay, so let's get started. We are going to click on the Persian Empire. So some people do not include the Persian Empire for South Asia, but there is such a huge impact on the art and architecture that I feel the Persian Empire definitely needs to be covered. So starting with the Achaemenid Empire, began with Cyrus the Great, and after Cyrus was Darius the Great. Under Cyrus, though, there was an importance of governing conquered people, so he was able to kind of gather and rule over all of these nomadic sheep herders, all these different kind of clans within the area, and he was able to just kind of conquer one region after the other, and that's because he had a way of governing the people, meaning that he didn't say, this is my religion, you must also follow it, or this is my culture, you must also assimilate to my culture. He was very accepting of all cultures and all religions. So there's a very important piece of art called the Cyrus Cylinder. It's actually also considered a piece of archaeology too. And it is kind of like a retelling of how he governed his people. Under his rule, and also most of the Achaemenid Empire, women had very, very good rights that definitely you don't see in the Roman Empire or the Greek Empire either. So women were allowed to go out by themselves. They didn't have to be accompanied. They were also allowed to own land, and they are also able to kind of hold higher positions of title, like management and things like that. So under Darius the Great, Persepolis was constructed. It's this beautiful piece of architecture, incredible ways of carving, low relief motifs, and you're going to get into that during your reading. After Darius the Great, he was overthrown by the Roman Empire, and then after the Romans were kicked out, the Parthian Empire kind of came rise. And so what we see in this architecture and also in the art is we go from seeing the side view of the person depicted in the art to now a full frontal view of the person and the person's body. And you're going to see this in the architecture and the art. And then after that, the Sasanian Empire, we go back to the side view and the three-quarter view of people in carvings and paintings. Relationship of art and religion, I want you to really focus on this. So in any region of the world, art has the ability to reach the masses. So whether you are literate or not illiterate, remember this is during the time where not everybody was going to school. Paper was a rarity. It wasn't the case where a majority of your population was literate or could read writing. So art had a way to make religion accessible. And so art was now a way to also rule the people and how to educate the people. Now, when we look at Islam, Islam actually prohibits the depiction of God, but you have this beautiful writing style, and that kind of does encourage, especially the upper class, to be more literate, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the lower class was literate. So they were very dependent on people in a higher status, in a higher kind of religious status, to kind of read to them and kind of tell them what was going on. But writings were all inside of temple walls. So you had depictions of flowers and things of nature, but not of people. So that's very important to know. Um, Hindu and Buddhist religions heavily depended on iconography. So you're going to see the kind of change between those two. Questions to keep in mind. How does art convey religious narrative? How does art declare or reflect sacred spaces? And this is really kind of reflects in our architecture, or how holy things are now housed and treated. How does religious iconography turn art into a teaching tool? So keep all of these three things in mind. Hinduism. Hinduism is dominated by the Brahmin, or the priesthood caste. So they're kind of like at the upper part of this caste food chain. It's very rigid, and priests are always going to be at the top, and then everyone kind of follows below. Elaborate rituals, reciting of the Vedas, which are mantras and hymns, repetitive prayers known as japa. Only the Brahmins can perform these rituals, so they are of a very high status in society. So religion isn't necessarily kind of accessible by everybody. You are now relying on the priests to give you your blessings, to kind of read these sutras to you, or these prayers. You're relying on the priests to also pray for you, because you, as a layperson who has to go and work the farms and feed your family, don't really have time for constant prayer. So that's where monks and monasteries now come into place. Worship of one God, but that also means that they are accepting of the possibility of other gods, and the fact that these other gods do play a role in the I guess interaction with their God, right? So it could very well be that they are devoted to one God in particular, but things of good fortune and things or things of disaster could be enacted by other gods around. Samsara is the cycle of reincarnation, right? So this death, rebirth cycle. And all depending on your karma is how you kind of move up these levels of samsara. So karma is the sum of a person's actions, and this represents their current life or their previous lives, right? So it's always, have you ever heard of the saying, oh, I must have done something terrible in my previous life to deserve this, right? So it's this idea of whatever you've done in your past lives kind of carry forward to your current life. And good or bad things happen because of the karma that you put out there. So moksha is the release from the cycle of rebirth impelled by the law of karma. So if you live a good life and your karma is just constantly building and building, and you're progressively getting better, you are now free of this cycle of rebirth and death. So it's kind of like this idea of heaven, right? Where the idea of like rebirth and death is kind of like this mid ground of we're still learning, we're not perfect beings, and we are achieving this enlightenment, or this level of goodness, in order to kind of break this reincarnation cycle. All right, Buddhism. Buddhism was actually born from the reaction of Hindu practice and the Brahmin caste system. So Siddhartha Gautama's research for the truth brought about his enlightenment, and he became Buddha. So he was a prince, and very wealthy, and lived a very charmed life. And so he noticed, he came upon a dying man, a starving man, and I believe a man who was ill, right? So he was kind of brought to these truths that there is suffering in the world, and so he wanted to kind of understand, why is there suffering? And so he kind of left his like charmed, very auspicious, very wealthy life behind, and now kind of embraced suffering. So there are four noble truths. Life is suffering. The cause of suffering is desire, and the cure for suffering is to remove desire. And in order to kind of reach enlightenment, you need to follow the Eightfold Path. And you can get into that more in the reading. Now, there is this idea of being able to break from the death rebirth cycle in Buddhism, just like there is in the Hindu religion. and that's called nirvana. So it's a state of heightened enlightenment or awakening. And you are now, in order to reach nirvana, you are eliminating all greed, all hatred, and all ignorance from your life. And there are two major schools of Buddhist thought, uh, the Theravada and the Manhanya, sorry, Mahayana. There we go. It's hard to get that one out. Okay, so one of the things you're going to see in Buddhist iconography, and I don't know if there's very many anime fans out there because you see this a lot um, in like kung fu movies or anything like that, where they're now doing hand signals. And these are actually recreations of mudras in Buddhist art, right? So Sanskrit, a mudra in Sanskrit is seal or sign. And the 5 fingers of your hand represent the 5 levels of consciousness needed to attain Buddhahood, right? So all depending on the statue or the religious figure or the painting that you see of Buddha, their hands are held in a very, very specific way. Also, if you do notice their Buddhist hands, sometimes they're kind of void of all wrinkles, void of any like joints or knuckles. So it almost is kind of oddly smooth. And sometimes you will encounter later on in other Asian countries where Buddhist hands are kind of almost childlike and chubby. So keep that in mind, that the hand signals are very much part of Buddhist religion, and it's for those who are in the know, they are now able to kind of interpret what this statue or the image of Buddha is trying to portray. All right, the Gupta Empire. Again, still in the main body of India, it influences on the spread of Buddhism, right? So we're looking at now in this Gupta Empire the spread of Buddhism, but how are they now changing how we view Buddha? So they have either this life size or greater than life size, and this is seen in the Bamiyan Buddha, or very, very small Buddhas. Think of like a little pocket Buddha that you can now carry around with you, or a smaller size Buddha where you can now travel with it. And this allowed the spread of the Buddhist religion to other regions. Advanced and highly sophisticated painting techniques, and we're going to cover that in the Ajanta caves. Importance of Purana and Hindu and Jain religions, right? So it's the preservation of deity origins, stories, prayers, and ceremonies in a book. Looks like I've misspelled ceremonies. I need to go in there and fix that. But it's held now in this big, bound, beautiful book. And the problem with trying to label art as falling in the Gupta Empire is because some of these Puranas have been around for centuries, and it's almost like a collected work. So it's very hard to tell which dynasty or which empire or which time frame some of these works have come from. But they are collected in this work, and it's very important. So we're also going to go over the importance of stupas. It's stupas, sorry, it's an architectural significance. Wow, my dyslexia is definitely coming out. So stupas are architectural significance, and it's mixing of local deities and Buddha. So why would you now, if Buddha is supposed to be just this one thing and it's omnipresent God, and you kind of put aside other deities and you don't focus on other deities, why do you now mix local deities in the structure of these stupas, and where Buddha is supposed to be kind of like worshipped, right? And we'll get into that a little bit too. Super important. We're now going to also move into the Sikh religion and architecture and art. So guru, and it's so weird because we throw this word around a lot in our everyday like language, like, oh yeah, so and so is a guru, but do we really know what guru is? And we borrow it from this culture, and instead of using it as slang, this is actually something that's very spiritual to them. So it's a highly spiritual teacher held in high respect and treated almost like a sovereign person. So treated almost like a king or prince, right? So Guru Granth Sahib is actually a sacred text for teaching the Sikh religion. It's about 1,430 pages long, And it's held in such high regard that when the sacred text is not being used, it is actually put into another room where it is laid to rest, right, when it's not in use of ceremony. So a text is a guidance. It's one of these things where if someone has one of these texts in their own home and they feel like they need guidance, they'll actually just thumb through the text, and wherever the text lands or wherever it opens when they open the text, off to the top left is what the guru is now trying to tell you what you need in your life, right? In the evening now, if you flip through it, the hymn to the bottom right is what's going to be leading you to the guidance from this guru. So this practice is called the Haknimana. And the importance of Sikh and sacred architecture, we're going to go over that in our art portion. It's located in present-day Pakistan and North India, and I really want you to concentrate on the how it's commemorated Guru Nanak, right? And so there are these 3 major sites that I'd like for you to focus on. And then there are 5 noble gurudaras in India. It signifies the principle of Miripiri, a balance of worldly and spiritual authority. And again, I'm so sorry if I'm botching this up. The Mughal Empire and Islam in India. So this is the origin of Islam. I want you to focus on the origin of Islam and the Prophet Muhammad, kind of know where he descended from, and then also the importance of the 5 pillars of Islam, and I've got them listed for you right here. So for the Mughal Empire, the 5th ruler actually had a beautiful wife that he was very devoted to, and she died during the childbirth of their 14th child. And so he created, and the romanticized story of why the Taj Mahal was created was because of his love and devotion to his wife. But there are other reasons of why this building has been constructed, and we're going to get into that in our readings too. So that is it. This is like a quick, very fast overview of everything we're going to cover. Kind of go back to this slideshow if you need to kind of write down some highlights. You will be seeing these in your quiz. And again, pace yourself. This is a very big module, and I want you guys to be able to enjoy it. If more than anything, do pay close attention to the videos if the readings are becoming a little daunting to you. All right, good luck.